How does the greatest conqueror in history, undefeated in battle, cause his empire to fall apart within a single generation? Alexander the Great's meteoric rise saw him build one of the largest empires the world had ever seen, stretching from Greece to India by the age of 30. His name is synonymous with military genius, and his legacy as a visionary leader is unmatched. Yet despite his brilliance, his empire crumbled as quickly as it had risen. The reason wasn't the result of a catastrophic defeat or an overpowering rival. Instead, it was a fatal flaw in Alexander's leadership, one rooted in ambition and a failure to secure the empire's future. Today we're exploring how Alexander's decisions during his meteoric rise planted the seeds of his empire's collapse. From his relentless campaigns to his controversial leadership style, we'll uncover how his grand vision ultimately unraveled. This is the story of Alexander the Great's greatest mistake and how even the most brilliant leaders can't outrun the consequences of their own ambition. Alexander the Great's path to glory began in 356 BCE, born to King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias. From the start, his destiny seemed extraordinary. Philip, a brilliant military strategist, had already united the fractious Greek city-states under Macedonian rule. Alexander, however, was raised to aim even higher. Under the tutelage of Aristotle, he developed a love for philosophy, science, and strategy, which shaped his vision of leadership. When Philip was assassinated in 336 BCE, Alexander inherited the throne at just 20 years old. The young king wasted no time asserting his authority, quelling rebellions within Greece and solidifying Macedonian control. But Alexander's ambitions extended far beyond Greece. His ultimate target was the Persian Empire, the most powerful state in the known world. In 334 BCE, he crossed into Asia Minor, launching a campaign that would cement his legacy. His victories were swift and decisive. At the Battle of Issus, he defeated the Persian king Darius III, showcasing his tactical brilliance. He then marched south, capturing the fortified cities of Tyre and Gaza before claiming the Persian capitals of Babylon and Persepolis. By 330 BCE, Alexander had toppled the Persian Empire and declared himself King of Kings. His empire now stretched from the Mediterranean to Central Asia, a testament to his unmatched military genius. But Alexander wasn't content to simply conquer. He sought to unify his empire by blending cultures, adopting Persian customs, and even encouraging his soldiers to marry local women. While the vision of integration was revolutionary, it began to alienate his Macedonian troops. The seeds of dissent were planted even as Alexander's empire reached its greatest heights. By 326 BCE, Alexander the Great had reached the height of his power. His empire stretched from Greece to the edges of India, and his conquests had reshaped the ancient world. But his relentless ambition drove him to push even further east, into the unknown lands of the Indian subcontinent. The Indian campaign, however, proved to be one of Alexander's most grueling endeavors. His army, already exhausted from years of constant warfare, now faced new and daunting challenges. Monsoon rains drenched the soldiers and made travel nearly impossible, while the dense jungles and unfamiliar terrain tested their endurance. One of the most significant battles of the campaign took place at the Hydaspes River, where Alexander faced King Porus. Despite fierce resistance, Alexander's forces emerged victorious, thanks to their superior strategy and discipline. Yet the cost of this victory was staggering. Alexander's troops were battered and weary, and morale was at an all-time low. When he proposed continuing eastward to conquer more territories, his soldiers finally refused. At the Hyphasis River, they mutinied, openly defying their leader for the first time in his career. This moment marked a turning point in Alexander's reign. His authority, once absolute, had been shaken. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed to turn back, but the journey home was fraught with hardship. Instead of taking an easier route, Alexander chose to lead his men through the harsh Gedrosian desert, where thousands perished from the heat, thirst, and starvation. This decision, driven by pride and desire to prove his resilience, further eroded his army's loyalty. Meanwhile, Alexander's attempt to integrate Persian customs into his leadership style caused increasing tension among the Macedonian followers. Practices like proskynesis, where subjects prostrated themselves before the king, were deeply unpopular and seen as a betrayal of Greek traditions. As Alexander's ambitions grew, so did the cracks in his leadership. His desire to unite his empire under a single cultural identity alienated the very people who had helped him build it. By the time Alexander returned to Babylon in 323 BCE, the foundations of his empire were already beginning to crumble. His inability to recognize the limits of his power, both in his campaigns and in his relationships with his soldiers, marked the beginning of his empire's unraveling. Alexander's vision was grand, but it was also unsustainable. The seeds of his greatest mistake, his failure to balance ambition with practicality, had been sown. Alexander the Great's most critical mistake wasn't made on the battlefield, but in his failure to plan for the future of his empire. For all his genius, he never clearly designated a successor, leaving his vast territories vulnerable to chaos after his death. This oversight wasn't due to ignorance. Alexander knew the fragility of his empire, built on the loyalty of diverse cultures and powerful generals. Yet whether out of arrogance or an unwillingness to confront his own mortality, he refused to name an heir. Some historians believe Alexander intended to rule indefinitely, believing himself invincible. Others argue that his premature death at the age of 32 left no time for proper succession plan. Either way, the consequences were devastating. Upon Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his generals known as the Diadochi were left to decide the empire's fate. With no clear instructions, they divided the empire amongst themselves, each vying for control. Ptolemy seized Egypt, establishing a dynasty that would last nearly 300 years. Seleucus took over much of Asia, creating the Seleucid Empire. Other generals claimed parts of Greece and Macedonia, leading to infighting and instability. This fragmentation was inevitable, without a unifying figure like Alexander. His empire had been held together by a charisma and unmatched leadership, but without him, it splintered into warring factions. The lack of succession plan also created deep resentment among his soldiers. Many felt betrayed by Alexander's failure to consider their sacrifices and the stability of the lands they had fought so hard to conquer. Additionally, Alexander's decision to blend cultures further complicated matters. His policy of integrating Greek and Persian traditions alienated both sides, making unity almost impossible after his death. Rebellions broke out in various regions, as local leaders saw an opportunity to reclaim their independence. The dream of a united empire was shattered, replaced by a patchwork of kingdoms ruled by rival generals. This chaos wasn't just political. It also had economic and social consequences. Trade networks established under Alexander's rule began to collapse, and the cultural exchanges he had encouraged dwindled. What might have been a lasting legacy of unity and innovation became a cautionary tale of ambition without foresight. Alexander's greatest flaws was not in his conquest, but in his failure to prepare for a world without him. His empire's rapid disintegration was a stark reminder that even the greatest leaders must plan for the future. Without a clear vision behind their own lifetimes, even the most extraordinary achievements can fade into history. Alexander the Great's relentless ambition left a profound legacy, but it also came at an enormous cost. His conquests reshaped the ancient world, spreading Greek culture and ideas across Asia, but the human toll was staggering. The wars that built his empire claimed countless lives, from soldiers who fought in the grueling campaigns to civilians caught in the crossfire. Cities were razed and entire regions were destabilized as Alexander pursued his dream of global domination. His soldiers, once fiercely loyal, grew disillusioned over time. Years of relentless campaigning coupled with harsh conditions left many questioning whether their sacrifices were worth it. Even as Alexander's empire expanded, its foundations grew weaker. Resources were stretched thin, and the logistical challenges of governing such a vast and diverse territory became increasingly apparent. Culturally, Alexander's policies of integration created both opportunities and tensions. While his promotion of Hellenistic culture fostered innovation and exchange, it also alienated many of his subjects. The blending of Greek and Persian traditions was revolutionary, but it deepened divisions within his empire. The most significant cost of Alexander's ambition, however, was the instability that followed his death. His failure to consolidate his empire or establish a clear succession plan left a power vacuum that plunged the ancient world into chaos. Historians often debate whether Alexander's vision was achievable or doomed from the start. Could any leader have maintained control over such a vast and culturally diverse empire? Or was Alexander's ambition simply too grand for his time? What's certain is Alexander's legacy is a paradox. He is remembered as a symbol of greatness and ambition, yet his story also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overreach. In the end, the cost of Alexander's ambition was the very empire he fought so hard to create.